Hey, it's Barry. And firstly, I have to give credit to Tim Pool, right? So he opened my eyes to something. He said last night, he said that you can't convince people of a truth using esoteric talk. And what he meant by that was a lot of people try to, if you keep up with a conversation on Twitter, for instance, and as things develop and people say, oh, this is a big boom, and it ties into that, and no matter your perspective and where you're coming from, that probably happens as that conversation progresses. The reason a lot of people don't use Twitter is it's a conversation. You're always behind if you're not on it, right? You don't know what in the heck people are talking about. So what Twitter people call normies, the rest of the world, if you start throwing these terms at them, they're not keeping up with the conversation, and they're not going to have a clue what you're saying. You throw these facts and that data and this number. And Tim gave an example of when he was selling some sort of humanitarian thing, some sort of nonprofit thing. Those guys you bump into outside of the Best Buy when you're leaving, and they say, hey, talk about this dogs in Africa, or whatever he was doing. But the sales techniques that he used never relied upon hitting someone with the data and the facts and the esoteric stuff up front. He relied on talking about the emotional bit. So that made me start thinking, beyond the fact that I'm inarticulate in the way I speak, and my videos are terrible, and my arguments on social media with people have, for the most part, failed. The ones that I tried to show something to. It's not that those people and I, or the folks that other people are talking to, it's not that people don't read. It's that we read different things. And because of what I did in my life and the time that I had on my hands, sitting in a metal Connex someplace in some silly country, and just because of my interest, sometimes I had time to read esoteric things, political writings from 100 years ago that no one in their right mind would spend time reading unless that was their academic specialty. Or so over the last year, when I would start into a conversation with, Walling wrote in 1914 that this is a plan of progressivism that leads to socialism, and Gramsci wrote this, and then the International Communist Committee took that, but then the postmoderns took it and modified it this way, and Alinsky did that. If I say all that stuff, they're like, well, that's nice. What the heck are you saying, man? What are you saying? What are you saying? So people don't see that this is a thing because they don't always understand the thing that came before. And I have failed in being able to communicate because I speak esoterically. I start speaking from a position of an assumed common knowledge about what Antonio Gramsci wrote, or what Aldous Huxley wrote in A Brave New World, in his projections, and what people were writing in the 1930s. All that nonsense, if people haven't read it, if it wasn't of interest to them, they're like, okay, that's nice. What are you talking about? So, for instance, back when the riots started, and I argued, hey man, have you read what Black Lives Matter says on their website, what they say? Here's their Marxist statement. Their counter argument to me, and probably to a lot of people's counter argument, was, well, I love my neighbor and I want justice. Well, we all want justice, I think. We were arguing two separate things. Much of our world, much of our discussions right now are based upon different people seeing different movies on different planets. The movies are in different languages, and the subtitles are in different languages. and maybe the laws of gravity are different on the two planets. Everything is different in what we see, and we come into this seeing it differently. Yeah, there was a time when we had a commonality of in terms of what we had read of the classics of history. In the founding era in the United States, there was essentially a common understanding that folks had a common grasp of the Greek classics, so people could write in a newspaper article an allusion to some epic tale, to a character, to an event, and people would pick up on it. It didn't take a lot of explaining, so you could begin from that common place. Well, not only do we not have a common place because we haven't read the classics, and we aren't interested in the same things. Worldviews have diffused and divided, so that we can't talk. And the Twitter at this point is, well, for me, it's merely a way to try to keep up with the conversation, what people think is happening. It's impossible to get news anywhere. So to parse through what people think is happening through snippets of revelations here and there is the only use it is to me. You're not going to convince anyone. When I say that something big is coming, and people don't understand it, they don't understand that this is a big thing. It's not just a color revolution. It's not just a civil war. It's not just an insurrection, riots. It's not just election fraud. It is fifth generational warfare. The nation state is the objective. And in fifth generation warfare, it's all about perceptions. It's about reality, perceptions of reality, creating reality. And we should not be surprised that we can't communicate. So I say all that just as a primer for this last set of videos, because there's not much more to say about this. We are where we are, and we've been in a war since the cultural war ended, and that's esoteric. It takes a lot of explaining to say how I got to that, and you could take that one statement and you argue with it. Those are the facts as I see them. I'm often wrong about things, but I'm not particularly wrong about this. So yes, we can't communicate. We're not going to be able to communicate. Not only are there separate worldviews in conflict, there's separate perceptions of reality. So the fact is, those two alien creatures can't exist in the same universe for long. There has to be a reckoning one way or the other way, and I'm not particularly looking forward to it. Thank you.